Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader, and today we're going to take a look at some recent prices for vintage mint on card as well as mint in sealed box items. As you can tell by this thumbnail, there were a ton of really nice Diecast line items that sold that I wanted to go through. Really good deals overall. Very tough to find. Some of those, like the Thai Bomber, that one was still mint in sealed box, I believe. We'll look at the auction description in more detail. A lot of these were sales that happened while I was away and traveling, so I'm just playing a little bit of catch up, but I hope that you enjoyed this look. A lot of these were very budget friendly relative to some of the high grade items, but very rare items like this Revenge of the Jedi Yoda. That's the gray head Cater, very tough to find variant Yoda, so we'll dig into that along with some others. Let's start off with some early card backs that sold at auction. First was a 12-back B Death Squad Commander graded AFA 85. Very nice, punched example, no price sticker. Straight 85s for the sub score. I was curious to see what this one would sell for because the photos were not great. Okay, it's not like you're getting Hakes super crisp, super clear photos like you see in all the big auction houses like Hakes and LCG and Heritage. They have really nice photos so you can get a nice look at the condition. So you're taking a little bit more of a risk on these and really having to do your research on it. I mean, just looking at these photos, I look at the top of that blister and I can't figure out what's going on there. It's got kind of scuffing going on, or is it shadows, or is it just, you know, a sticker residue? I don't know. But it got the 85 for all of them, but you're just taking a little bit of risk on some of these because it's just hard to discern how good they really are. I mean, if you look at the card there, look at the card on this. To the left at the top in the black, there looks like some weird scuffs. And then even on Wars, there's some weird looking scuffs. So I don't know. You know, it's just really tough to tell the true condition based on these photos. And I would recommend, if you're a seller, to try and take as good as you can photos because it does affect the final sales price. This one sold for $17.80. And again, what does a 12B Death Squad Commander AFA 85, what would that go for in some of these other auction houses? Probably the same price or more, to be honest. It's just, to me, it's a little risky dropping $1,700 or more on an item when you don't have a very good way to assess the true condition. Because like we talk about, you know, you buy the item, not the grade. And some of these do degrade after the fact. And here's a good example of that. So this one was a 12B from the same seller, a 12B for the Sand People graded AFA 80. And that one only sold for $761. Now, in this case, you know, the Sand People, looking at the paint, right? If you look at the paint on it, is that paint degrading? The silver paint on the cheeks and on the eyes? Yeah, it looks like it to me. Is there modeling on the cape, on that collar? It looks like it to me, right? So it's just a risk that you take. Now, this one did have the lighter, I think, the lighter brown paint apps that a lot of people covet. A lot of people really covet those light brown paint apps on the Tusken Raider. A lot of the early examples had that kind of light brown bandolier, light brown breathing apparatus around his neck. And I've seen just loose examples with that light brown paint scheme go for a boatload of money on Facebook and elsewhere. So it is, I think, what it looks like to me, which is kind of the light brown paint apps that was found on very early 12-back Sand People Tusken Raiders. But because it's got that modeling on the cape, photos were not great. Looks like it's got maybe a little bit of card wave going on. See how wavy the card is at the bottom. You know, all those factors can contribute to these low sales prices, and you got to bid accordingly. But I just wanted to at least show that because I think if there is modeling on, you know, some kind of discoloration going on or starting, it's only going to get worse on these Sand People. It's just a common defect for a lot of mint on card Sand People where that cape starts to stain and turn a very dark brown in spots, just like the vinyl cape Jawa. We see that all the time, mint on card, where the cape has started to stain and degrade. These are 40-plus-year-old figures. It's going to happen. So 761 probably reflects that price, right? Next up, here was an AFA 80 12-back C3PO. Now, this one looked to be really clean. 80, 85, 85. Again, the figure close-up was super blurry. So, again, you're taking a little bit of risk. You're going to have to really zoom in on these. It looks good to me, but you're dealing with a lot less information than you typically would be where a seller understands how to take good close-ups. But that one still sold for $10.85 for a 12C AFA 80. That's about fair market value in my mind for what that was. Next up, we had an AFA 80 for the 12-inch Luke Skywalker. I thought this was actually a really fair deal at $900. It's about where they usually sell. 80s and 80 pluses are kind of in that $800 to $900 range. It's maybe $100 higher slightly. I think $800. There was another one that was an AFA 80 plus that I believe sold for around this same price. So it was probably priced kind of in line with that. But that one did sell after sitting for a couple of days for $900. And again, it was a factory sealed, not qualified grade AFA 80 for the 12-inch Luke Skywalker. Next up, here's an interesting one. This was a mint and seal box movie viewer. We've seen, and this one had like a $1 rebate offer. I don't know if they all did. They might have all had that $1 rebate offer just to entice people to buy the actual viewer. And then you can, if you bought it, you would have $1 to put towards the plug-in movies, movie pieces that would go through there. So it's one of those items that is kind of wonky. It was early on when they were trying to monetize and figure out what people wanted for the Star Wars line. And this is, because it's wonky, because it's kind of an oddball type item, there's not many of them out there that are still factory sealed in this kind of condition. This is probably something you'd want to grade, because we've seen, I think we saw a graded example of one of these sell for pretty big money. And it did sell for $395 in an auction. So that was an interesting sale. The same seller also had a bunch of really nice die cast, as I alluded to at the beginning of the video. Now, they were not perfect, right? They were in varying degrees of condition. This one was where my biggest nightmare, and why I don't buy mint on card die cast really, is because they're so heavy that they can rip it right off the card as the glue or the seal on these mint on cards starts to degrade. And that's probably what happened here, right? So we had the blister kind of fall off for the TIE Fighter. The same thing happened for the X-Wing. The same condition for the Land Speeder. So they were all, near mint condition that were no longer really truly sealed. And maybe whoever bought it, they bought them, they opened them to display them loose. So that could have happened too. I'm not saying that it definitely happened because of age-related degradation to the seal, but they were all just sold in a lot. And it's a nice way to pick up near mint plus condition die-cast loose vehicles, along with the card back and blisters. So those all four sold for $461. You're paying about $110, $115 a piece, maybe $125 after taxes. Very nice to get, very, very tough to find these in near mint condition, especially the X-Wing usually does yellow. That was near mint. The canopy on that Land Speeder was not yellowed, which is another common problem. So those were some really nice high-grade untouched examples that were probably just stored like this, or were stored on a shelf and they were later put back in the original blisters. But $461. But the same seller also had some really nice true mint on cards that I wanted to show you. The first one was the Darth Vader's TIE Fighter Advanced, or TIE Advanced. That one was a clear blister, early 21 back. That one sold for $218.49. Seemed to be in really good shape. The stem on the blister was really clean. I mean, everything looked really nice on it. I'm surprised it sold that cheap, but $218.49. The X-Wing was also super clean. It had some scuffing on the back of the card that was fairly minor, but the blister itself was crystal clear. And that's a very high-grade example, in my opinion. Probably has a good chance at an overall 80 grade, despite the scuffing on the back of the card. That one sold for $321. Then we start getting into some heavy hitters. We had the Imperial Cruiser mint and sealed box. That one was a beauty. this one would grade very well. I did send this one out to my Patreon supporters. It had one little crunch in the lower corner and on the back, but what I've found with the grading companies is that they take that kind of stuff into account. I still think it gets a 75, maybe an 80 grade, somewhere in there. Probably a 75 because of that crunch in the corner. But very nice, crystal clear blister, 810 on that one. The Twin Pod Cloud Car was yellowed, but that's a tough one to find. That's super clean. It had some shadowing from, sticker removal in the upper right corner, some light creases, things like that. 150. That's a good deal. That's a really good deal. The Slave 1 sold for 403. That one had a clear blister. Again, none of these were absolutely perfect, but this one is one that I'd probably risk stacking some books on it to try and flatten the card out. It's a little risky because it is the Diecast with a weird and very large blister. But that one was a beauty with that clear blister. I thought that was worth every penny at $400. And the Snow Speeder looks like it's also clear blister to me. Just very light edge wear to it. That one sold for $394.99. So very nice deals on all those. That one had a crease in the upper right-hand corner on the back there that you can see. But those were some beauties. The big one was this one. This one was a mint in sealed box die-cast tie bomber. This is easily the most difficult of the die-cast to find, and this one was pretty clean. It did have some scuffing and things like that on the box, but you got to remember that just loose complete in decent shape, not even mint condition, but just in decent shape, they can go for $800 to $1,000 all day long. So this one did sell for $22.58. Never opened. See photos for condition. Obviously, the blister had yellowed, but I think even in this condition, it probably gets a yellowed 80, and we've seen some in similar condition that have been graded by the grading companies, DCA from AFA, things like that. Those can go for super, super big money, like thousands of dollars, $3,000 to $4,000 to $5,000 for the die-cast tie bomber. I didn't look it up on Hakes in terms of their closed auctions, but I know there's been a few on there. And I think that this is probably the most pristine, ungraded, minted and sealed box example that we've seen, to my knowledge, on eBay. So this was a real gem, and congrats whoever picked that up at $22.58. I thought that was a bargain of a deal, to be honest with you. Here are a few other mint on cards that were not perfect. None of them were perfect, but I thought they were worth taking a look at because they were some pretty decent deals. This one was a 31 back. This one was a Leia Bespin clear blister. It obviously had some edge wear. It had a little litho issue in the upper right by the logo from where someone tried to remove the price sticker unsuccessfully. Light edge wear to the card, but a very nice example overall. That one sold for $275. One bid on that one. Pretty good deal there for about a 75 grade. This is actually a very tough Yoda variant to find. I had this in my collection for a little while and I sold it. I immediately regretted it. I wish I hadn't sold it, but this is a clear blister 48 back B for Yoda. This one has the actual true sticker for Revenge of the Jedi, not printed on the card, an actual sticker, but it's the gray head Yoda. So you can see there the obvious color difference between Yoda's head and his body and arms and legs and hands and feet. This is what's known as the Cater Factory Gray Head Yoda. And it's known to come on this particular card back. It's a very desirable variant, even loose graded. And that one mint on card sold for $612. I thought that was a bargain of a deal. My CAS 80, I think I had an 80 grade for mine, mint on card, that I sold for about $1,000. This one I don't think is in as good a condition as mine was, but it might be. I mean, it has a good chance at an 80 grade overall. I'd have to see the blister in more detail. Blister looks pretty solid. This is also something, if you see those little, what look like cracks on the stem, those are not cracks, okay? That's just where the factory overfolded when they were manufacturing these stems. I had the exact same issue on my 48 back Yoda 48B. And it's a common problem with a lot of Empire Strikes Back card backs from the mid 40s, the 41s all the way to the 48s. They all had weird kind of issues like that, especially the 48 backs. So don't freak out if you see that, those kind of like little cracks, right? That what look like cracks. They're not cracks. They're just overfolded plastic. And the grading companies understand that. They factor it into their grading. And when I sent mine in to be graded, it was factored in and still got an 80 grade. But don't freak out if you see that, if you happen to have some Empire Strikes Back mint on cards from the 40s, usually in the 40s, like 45 backs. Usually 45 backs are okay, but I see it especially on 48 backs. That's where you really see weird kind of crinkling or overheating, or those overfolding or pinching at the top of the blister by the figure's head. All those kind of weird defects are very common on 48 backs especially, so don't freak out. 612, though, to me, for an unpunched clear blister example of the Cater Greyhead Factory Yoda, I think that's an awesome deal. That's a really, really good price. Next up was another 48 back. This was a 48 back C for Forlom. It did have a yellowed blister. It was graded CAS 80. That one sold for $338. A very good deal for a fairly moderate to light yellowed blister. Poor man's debut card for Forlom, as we like to call it. It did have that ugly Toys R Us price sticker in the upper left, but it was punched. So those factors held the price down a little bit. And $338, though, can't beat that price. Good deal there. Here was a transition Luke Bespin. This is the 48 back free 9-num offer. Punched example, ungraded, not perfect, lots of edge wear, probably about a 75 or 75 plus grade, but it's a tough transition card back that is still clear blister. I thought that was a beauty. Brown hair. It did have what is very common for the brown haired Luke Hong Kongs, where the torso starts to change color relative to the arms and legs, whether it's on an ESB card back or a Return of the Jedi early 48 back, or even the 77 backs. You can see that torso discoloration start. Don't freak out if you see that on the brown haired Lukes. They all do it, and they probably will all do it by the time I am about to kick the bucket. So don't freak out. But I thought that was a good deal at $482. I mean, we saw a higher graded example sell in the last Jeff Jacob Hakes auction that sold for quite a bit of money. So $482 is a really good price for a perfectly fine display piece. You could grade it or not, in my opinion. I think it probably gets a 75 overall. Next up was a 65 back mint on card Luke Jedi. This one was a Taiwan Luke 65 back, a slight yellowing to the blister. Very good shape overall, though. I think this one probably gets about an 80. But you can see that TJ factory code next to the, if I can get my thing to work here, let's see. Can't get it. But anyway, if you look at the proof of purchase in the lower right corner, you'll see a little TJ. I'm trying to get it to zoom in, but eBay is idiotic sometimes. But the TJ is the factory code for Taiwan. And obviously on the left-hand side, it says figure made in Taiwan. So 65A made in Taiwan. Very good shape overall. That one sold for $265. The interesting thing, too, is that this one doesn't have the inner tray for the Luke. Whereas some of the Return of the Jedi Luke Jedis, they do have the inner tray for the figure. So I guess the Taiwan 65 back A's did not. But that was a pretty nice example that sold for $265. Very good price on that. Some Power of the Force cards to round things out. We had a Lando Calrissian unpunched that sold for $250 on one bid. That's a really good deal there. The Imperial Gunner was punched with moderate yellowing. That one sold for $335. I thought that was a really good deal for what appeared to be a very clean example. Probably gets a yellowed 80 pretty easily. $335 is a great deal. The Luke Stormtrooper had very light yellowing to the blister on that one, and that one sold for $760. Pretty good deal there. KB Toys price sticker in the upper right-hand corner, punched example, and a very good price at $760. And then finally, I don't know if this is the second or the third time this is sold, but this is a Toy Tony Palatoy Boba Fett 45 back C. So again, this is factory, actual original parts, but it was factory assembled after the fact. And Jeremy Bullock autographed it in the lower right-hand corner, and it sold for $3,050. That seems like a really big number to me. Probably an overbid, if you ask me. And it wouldn't surprise me to see it back on the market for a fourth time. But beautiful Palatoy card back. That was a Toy Tony, unfortunately, but it was signed by Jeremy Bulloch in the lower right-hand corner. I love the gold color and the fact that he signed it on the flames. It just really pops to me. It's a beautiful example of the Toy Tony Palatoy Boba Fett with Jeremy Bulloch's autograph. 3050 though, that's a big number. 111 bids on that. That's a lot of bids. So that was a very high demand item. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look at recent sales. Don't forget to leave me a like, as it does help out with the channel. Thank you as always for watching. Thank you to my Patreon supporters for supporting the channel, and I'll be back soon.